Free, seems like you're doing good, man. Where are you?
I'm in South Florida.
Staying safe and quarantined and all of that?
Yeah, Mike Vick lives probably about 3/4 of a mile down the road.
Really? How's your family and everybody else doing?
Hanging in there, just trying to get used to everything, this whole new way of living.
You've stayed involved with media and football and the NFL. You doing anything with any of that during all this time right now?
I did do media, and I did do some things with the NFL and that mentor program. But over the last 5 years or so, I haven't done much of it. I enjoyed the time when I got to come back to Blacksburg and talk to the student body. That was really a highlight of the whole program. But as those type of groups grow, the mentor program, the opportunities become a little more limited. So I hadn't been doing much of that. And with the media, it was a lot harder than I thought it was. I know sports, I know football and basketball, but knowing names and numbers and, kind of the backgrounds of some guys, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of memory. And my memory bank just isn't that strong these days.
Mine isn't either, for you. You just got to find people around you that give you cards to look at and cheat sheets and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't have any of that, so that must have been what I was missing.
Yeah, you got to get yourself a Mike Burnup,
Oh man, one of the best.
Free. You just mentioned coming back and talking to students here in Blacksburg. You did that in Coach Beamer's last season. You talked to the team in 2015. What was that like, the emotion on your side of it, from having, of course, played for Coach Beamer at such a time where the program was about to launch, whether people knew it or not, and then talking to guys that were a part of his last team?
I always tell people it's better to be remembered in a positive manner. And the fact that I had the opportunity to come back and share with those young men who shared the same seat that I once sat in, not knowing what tomorrow brings. Some have NFL aspirations. Some won't be able to play football again. And just to kind of share them a little bit about me and how I got there. And you can work as hard as you want, but you need a little bit of faith and you need a little bit of luck and you need that good support to make things happen. And I had all of those things. And, I had a great family background and backing, and just support system was strong from the time I played Pee Wee League football with Coach Andre Barnhart and Bucky Lee. Was my historic basketball coach in Baltimore. And, then I got to go to Virginia. Then I got to go to Baltimore Polytechnic for high school, where I didn't even play sports my 9th or 10th grade year. It wasn't until my 11th grade year where I played basketball and football. And I wasn't a starter my junior year in football, but I had become a star in basketball. And my senior year, I had a season that was amazing. I thought out of my reach, and I received some football scholarships, and Virginia Tech was my first landing point, then going to the Green Bay Packers. But, I talk about some of the strong people in my life, my Pee Wee League coaches, my high school coaches, Coach Bucky Kimmett and Coach Augie Wobble, who have both since passed on, just how much they meant to me in my life. And then I get passed on to a guy like Coach Frank Beamer, who was much like those other guys, wanted to get the best out of you as a person and as an athlete second. And for me, I was like, that's backwards. You want to get the best out of me as an athlete and academically next. But, those guys that I just mentioned were such a catapult in my career and my chances to make the NFL. And then to go play for a coach, Mike Holmgren, under the Vince Lombardi umbrella that exists as soon as you hit the state of Wisconsin. I've been blessed along the way to have not only good coaches, but men that have cared about not only me as a person, but also me as an athlete and my well-being.
Free, you came to Blacksburg, and one of the things that we take great pride in, of course, is the rural nature of the setting and the fan base and all that goes with that. I'm a Minnesota kid and I grew up a Viking fan, but I spent a lot of time in Green Bay too, later on. And one of the things that I always tell people when they say, what is it like to be a part of Virginia Tech from a football perspective? And I say, honestly, I think the best comparison in the NFL is the Green Bay Packers in terms of the makeup of their fan base, the geographical location. The only difference is there isn't a huge Power 5 school sitting right in the middle of Green Bay. Did you get that sense? Did that make the transition to the NFL even easier for you in the fact that it felt somewhat similar?
It felt a lot similar. And I go back to being in high school, and I remember waking up the beginning of my 9th grade year, and I thought I was going to a sports powerhouse high school in Baltimore known as Dunbar. It's a powerhouse sports school, and that's where I thought I was going. And I woke up first day of school, and I remember my mom telling me that, I had passed the admissions test to get into Baltimore Polytechnic, and I'd be going to Baltimore Polytechnic. And she emphasized how much it would change my life in a positive manner. But at 14, it really didn't make a lot of sense. But, I just thank my parents for being there and guiding me, because there's a lot of different routes that I could have taken throughout my life and throughout my whole childhood. And even to this day, I've always had the support, my mom and dad, and they helped guide me. And I say that to say I had to go to an academic high school, which was Baltimore Poly. And they weren't great at basketball. They were powerhouse in football, but they didn't pass the football. So for a wide receiver, it kind of was senseless to want to even go out for the football team. But I had a spectacular junior year in high school, went on to put our school on the map as far as basketball went. And as you mentioned, then I went to Virginia Tech, a rural town. You kind of just dropped off there. You're in the middle of nowhere. It is not a true major airport terminal. There's not a lot of transportation to get you from Blacksburg back to Baltimore, Maryland. So I was excited that it was only 5 hours away. I didn't realize it was a different kind of 5 hours away, like in the middle of nowhere. And for me, at first, it was kind of hard to adjust to coming from Baltimore, Maryland, a major city. You had stores on every corners. Everything was accessible, and it took some adjusting. I remember being a freshman, going home a lot and missing home, missing the blue crabs in Baltimore and different things. And I just found my time at Blacksburg to be great once I settled in. And I had a roommate who was from Radford, Virginia. He was also a high school star. So he made my transition to Blacksburg easy. It's just that he liked watching race car driving on Sunday, and I wanted to watch football. So there was a major conflict there. But aside from that, I couldn't have asked to be placed in a better place. It forced me to appreciate the people around me. That includes the coaches, my teammates. It was like a brotherhood. It's like living in a village of all your brothers. And it was an amazing place. We overcrowded places and venues in the media area. And man, it was like family. It was like living in the country in the middle of nowhere, but having all your family there. And those are those teammates that practiced every day with me and lifted weights and got up at 5 a.m. and different things of that nature. And then going to Green Bay, it was much of the same. I'm not being disrespectful when I say it, but there wasn't a lot to do.
No, you had the night at casino, and that was about it.
And that was about it. And I coming from Baltimore, Maryland, I had took my licks on gambling over the years, and I had knew better than to get caught up in a casino.
You guys, isn't that where you stayed as a team?
Yeah, we stayed right there, but we were on restrictions. But when I got to Wisconsin, I found like, as a football team, we were in the middle of nowhere. But again, we were in that village, all surrounded by family. And man, I'm telling you, being at Blacksburg made my transition to Green Bay so much easier. I had players used to say, well, how do you play in Green Bay? And I'm like, man, listen, it wasn't a lot different than where I played in college. And I had some of my best times ever there and passed on to Green Bay. Man, I really enjoyed, to be honest, like I said, coming from Baltimore, Maryland, you don't sleep with your car door and your house door open. I enjoyed those moments in Blacksburg and in Green Bay where I could go to sleep and not worry about whether I locked the front door or I locked my car door. Man, it was just great living, and it was just a recipe for a young kid from Baltimore.
You just said it right there. That was the question in the early to mid 90s was, how do you play in Green Bay? People say it right now, what do you mean you're going to go to Buffalo? How are you going to go do that? I'll do no disrespect to Buffalo. But you guys were the team in the era, Free, that changed that, much to Vikings fans' chagrin, with Reggie, I think, making the first move to Green Bay, and obviously the ascension of Brett Favre. What was it like? Because people now from this generation, they're just like, oh, it's the vaunted Green Bay Packers again. It wasn't like that in the 80s. You guys made it that way again in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird transition. I came from being the highest drafted player in our graduating class at Virginia Tech to one of the guys in the locker room, and that was quite of a shocking reality. You go from all Big East, everything, and Mr. Virginia Tech, and now you're number 8 on the depth chart. But I remember walking into that locker room, and I remember seeing this big guy, man, and it was Reggie White, and I was like, wow. That's Reggie White. And about 45 seconds later, someone comes by and slaps me on the rear end and goes, come on, rookie. You got to go get in this playbook. We got to get you ready to play. And that was Brett Favre. And, I was starstruck for a minute. But those were like big brothers to me. Then I had a guy like Robert Brooks, who was our star wide receiver at that point in time after Sterling Sharp had to retire. He took me under his wing. He showed me the offense. He showed me the ropes, much like a guy like Bo Campbell and Nick Cullen did and Michael Sturdivant during my Virginia Tech days. He took me under his wing. He showed me the ropes. And I was kind of looking at Robert like, maybe he's setting me up to fail. But he really was a monumental piece in my career and the way I was able to elevate so early in my career. And man, just a great group of guys in that locker room. It was like family again. Reggie White, he was a guy that guys had respect for. And he was a real man, though. He had typical human traits, and we were able to be ourselves around him. People always wonder, well, what was it like, man? We were able to be ourselves. As long as we didn't cross the line, and that line was probably very thin, man, but we had a ball. We had a great time during my time in Green Bay, and I was surrounded by a lot of veterans. So I think that kind of pushed me early on as well. And they had a sense of urgency about winning the title, and it was now. It wasn't next week. It wasn't next year, 3 years. It was now. And I kind of got thrusted into it, and man, it was an amazing ride.
Well, it was now. It wasn't the first season, but it was the second season. You guys win the Super Bowl. You have a massive touchdown catch in the Super Bowl. I know I've gone back and seen you say that was the best moment or the biggest catch in your career. What was that whole run like, culminating in that Super Bowl victory? You were still young, but like you said, it was a very veteran team.
Well, I was young, and that same year, our star wide receiver, Robert Brooks, who I mentioned, showed me the ropes. He was our number one guy. I was our number two. So he was the Z and I was the X in college terms. And he blew his knee out. And suddenly in my second year, I'm just his second year pro. I'm just becoming a starter that year. And I'm thrust into the Z position, which is the number one position. And it was everything that I ever wanted. It was everything that I ever dreamt of. It was everything that I ever strived for. But there was still a sense of nervousness of was I ready? And I remember the first game out as being that guy when Robert Brooks got hurt. I had a pretty good game, but then I broke my forearm. So I had to miss probably the rest of the season. And we went out and acquired a guy that I played Tecmo Bowl, and I used him a lot. A guy named Andre Rison. He was suddenly on my roster. And I was faced with a question that I could put a metal plate in my arm and play the rest of the season out, or I could just rest my arm and get ready for next year. So I didn't ask my mother because I already knew what her answer would have been. We'll see you next year, buddy. So I got the metal plate in my arm. I rehabbed it for 4 weeks. We tested it out. We padded it up. We put a cast on it. And I came back in 5 weeks. And I remember when we came back in 5 weeks, we just went on a tear. And I was so nervous to take that first hit because I hadn't played in 5 weeks. And I had a cast on. And I didn't realize the cast was just as much as a weapon because people were scared of getting struck by it than it was for protection for me. And I remember after I caught that first pass and getting that first hit, and I went back into that locker room and I got to sit down with Andre Rison and Derek Mays and Brett Favre and Keith Jackson among the greats. And I just knew that we had something great to finish off. And we went on a run where we didn't lose a game. We had home field advantage. And it culminated with an 81-yard touchdown throw from Brett Favre to Virginia Tech's own Antonio Freeman for 81 yards, which was and still is the longest touchdown reception for a winning Super Bowl team.
And will be, I think. you guys were rolling, right from when you get there. And then bang, into the division in 98 comes a guy by the name of Randy Moss. As a receiver, what did you make of him? You saw him obviously twice a year then for a few years, but he was just kind of a different breed, wasn't he?
I knew he was something special when that's all our defensive backs and safeties talked about all week was Randy Moss. And they were a confident, cocky group of receivers and safeties we had. We had Leroy Butler and Doug Evans, and we had some confident guys back there, but all they talked about was Randy Moss, Randy Moss. And I remember them coming to Green Bay the first time we played them on a Monday night. And man, I really saw what all the fuss was about. He shredded our defense. He caught passes up and down the sideline at leisure. And just watching him from the other side of the field, I was like, wow, that guy is the real deal. And man, it was always a pleasure to play against Randy and watch him. We spent the Pro Bowl together, and man, he's just as loud as he was a great player.
Free, I just had to wedge in that one positive Vikings memory for me because I like that 98 Monday night game too, because now we go ahead to another signature moment in your career. 2000, again, it's Monday Night Football. Again, it's Vikings-Packers. Chris Dishman, I remember I was an intern at the KFAN in Minneapolis at the time, so I would talk to Chris a lot. And you just mentioned that you guys had some cocky and confident DBs. He was certainly in that category.
Right,
so we get down to it, and you take me through the play. It's one of those where if you were on the Packers side, the Vikings side, I remember where I was. I remember who I was with. I remember the fight that it sparked afterwards out in the snowbanks. I mean, it's one of those moments that just lives on.
Well, it was a great game on a Monday night, and we had went into overtime, and the weather got bad. It was November, so of course it was rather chilly, or should I say cold, in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
and it had started to rain. And I remember we went into overtime after they had missed a kick to win the game, and we got the football. And I remember it was 3rd and 10, and I had to go across and run like a dig route, a 15-yard dig route to keep the chains moving. And we moved the chains, and we ran a few more plays. And we got on the other side of the 50. And whenever we got on the other side of the 50, we just wanted to take a shot at the other team. And I remember Brett changing the play at the line of scrimmage, and he gave me a signal for a slant and go. Well, unfortunately, the signals matched the routes universally around the NFL. So the Vikings at that time had Sherm Lewis, who was a longtime Green Bay assistant. He knew what the signal meant. So every player on that team knew. And Chris Dishman came up in a bump and run situation. And I said, okay, this is great. I'm going to give him a hard stick, quick stick to the inside, a hard one out, and then I'm going to take him deep. Well, the ball blew away, and the ref had to blow the whistle and replace the football. And by that time, through all the signals that Brett and I were giving each other, they started giving each other signals. So they caught on to what we were going to do, and Dishman went from a bump and run coverage, which again, I was very okay with him staying at bump and run. But then he went to an off coverage, and they walked the safety down. And I thought, this is not good, because if I go slant, the safety's going to be on the inside. So I ran my slant and go, because Coach Holmgren said, once you change the play, you can't change it back, because you have different aspects to protection, like the offensive line and the tight end and the running backs that it would confuse. He would always say, it's not a two-man game. You got 9 other people to account for. So to make a long story short, I ran the route, not thinking it was such a good route now. When the ball went up in the air, it was kind of a duck. It wasn't one of Brett's best footballs. And I remember at this time, Dishman was in perfect situation to make an interception. And I said, he can't get an interception, because that's what we talk about in the wide receiver room is don't let another guy get an interception, because then it's on you. So I was just really trying to make him not intercept the football. And in the process, I remember knocking the ball out of his hands and falling to the ground. And he turned to the stands as if to say, oh man, that was the one. And then he started taunting. But I braced myself, and I felt the football hit me on my shoulder pad. And I glanced over, and it was still coming downward. Something brown on a downward trajectory. And I just put my arms out under it and scooped it like an egg that you didn't want to hit the ground because it would explode. I placed my hands there. The football fell in it like an egg would, a soft basket. I kind of crept. If you ever watched the video, I crept when I got up, because I was looking for that strong safety who was a hard hitter. And I was thinking, man, he is somewhere around. And when I didn't see anyone, I kind of got up and started to run forward. And that strong safety was coming from the backside on a beeline. His name was Robert Griffith. You're a Vikings fan. You know what I'm talking about. And he's one of the hardest hitting safeties at that time. And I was able to sidestep him in the process. And then I kind of just trotted into the end zone. And instead of doing a Lambeau leap, I kind of did a jump. I jumped onto to where the bar was, and I catapulted myself backwards. And, you know, one of the first times I remember that my teammates picked me up and carried me off the field.
Yep, that's pretty much how I remember. That was very thorough. I appreciate it.
I talked about how important my family is in my life. So after the play, I looked for my brother and my father and a few of my friends who had come up for the game. But again, it was cold and rainy. They had decided to go in the family room and watch it on the big screen. So they weren't there while I'm looking for them after the biggest play, arguably in my career at that point in time. So, man, just a wonderful night. A better moment when I woke up to Sports Center. So, man, just one of those plays that you're glad you made.
Free, all the way back at the outset of this, you said you got to have a lot of dedication, you got to have a little faith, and you got to have a little luck. You know, that was a phenomenal time in the NFC Central/North with some of the characters. You mentioned Sherm Lewis and all these other names started popping back to me. But the same was true of your time in Blacksburg, because you guys were the team and teams that started the bull streak, got things rolling. I know you still talk to some of those guys, and you've been bonded to them forever. Who are some of those guys? Who are some of your best? What are some of your best stories from your playing time here in Blacksburg? And how much pride do you guys take in the fact that that bull streak endures and it means so much to the current guys, clearly, when you talk to them about it?
That's a lot of questions there. Let's
break
them down one by one. Let's just go one by one. That way I can address them all.
All right. Just take me back. Who are some of the better characters that you still stay in touch with in Blacksburg?
Funny, Super Bowl was here in South Florida this year, and I got a chance to meet up with Tyrone Drakeford. We hung out for a bit. We relived some memories. We relived our days battling at practice. Then on to the NFL when he was a 49er and I was a Green Bay Packer. We had some epic battles during 1995 to 1988. And, we got to hang out and just really laugh and giggle and reminisce and catch up with each other and check on each other's family. Josh Morgan is a guy that, we text a lot. Well, we don't text a lot. We text during certain times of the year. He's always had a lot of respect for me and me for the same for Josh. I had a lot of respect for the way he played the game. Former Hokie, my roommates, Kevin Martin, Steve Sanders, Richard Strong. Ken Brown was another guy that got drafted in my class. So we keep in touch a lot during today's society is group texting and different things like that. So you get a lot of great different memories of game day covers and senior posters and different things like that come across the group text. Renald White is another one who's involved in our group text. It's just great times for us as former Hokies to kind of look back on not only what we were as football players, but how young we were. That's the first thing you see when you look back at those pictures is, man, we look young. But it was nothing like being young and happy and playing for the Virginia Tech Hokies. Definitely one of the catapulting moments in my life that allowed me to do a lot of the things that I was able to do in my lifetime. I mentioned Michael Vick is a neighbor of mine, D'Angelo Hall, the list goes on. Just want to just pass along some names. Keon Carpenter, former Hokie, was a real good friend of mine. Brian Edmonds, two Hokies that we lost to death, but are still in our memories. So there's a lot of guys that, we still keep in touch. We still talk about Hokie memories, and because that was the time when you got to leave home and be on your own kind of. So those moments were special.
You still talk free to some of the more recent guys, the receivers. Clearly the nature of the offense has changed with Coach Fuente and Coach Cornelson arriving here. But guys like Isaiah Ford, Cam Phillips, that are pursuing those same dreams, do you mentor guys like that? And even guys that are on the current team like Trey Turner?
I follow those guys. They've had tremendous career, particularly Isaiah Ford. He broke a 25-year record that stood for the Hokies. But, I watch for those guys. And I think at that point in time in life, you're kind of just there if they need you. You've played high school football, you've gone through college, you have an agent, you have a staff around you that pretty much tells you how to do things and how to go about things. So I'm always a guy that I'm here if you need me. I don't want to overstep my boundaries. I don't want to act like I know things that I don't. But if it's football related, if it's life related to being in the NFL, just growing in the NFL, accepting new roles and responsibilities in life, I just kind of be there for these guys. And we as individuals, we all rely on our own support system that we personally put together. So just to know that out in left field, I've got Antonio Freeman if I really need him. So that's kind of the outlet that I try to be to these guys. And hey, 10 years ago, if they ever wanted to work out, they could have called me to work out. My working out days are over.
your working out days are over, but the bowl streak is not over. For you guys started that. I know you take a lot of pride in being a part of that team. Those teams do. But how much pride do you guys take in the fact that it continues to mean so much to the current players? It did to the guys that just went through. I remember talking to Isaiah and Cam and Sam Rogers and those guys about it, and it certainly does to these guys that are here now too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about talking with Cornell Brown, another Hokie legend, Ken Brown, Kevin Martin, and we always talk about during bowl season. Even though I'm a sports critic, one year we played an extra game to bowl qualify. We got to put an asterisk by that. But I'm glad that the bowl streak got to continue, and it's something that we take pride in because not a lot of universities can say they've been to a bowl game, you know, since the late 90s. They haven't missed a bowl game. And I think that's a tribute to our fans who also get to enjoy leaving Blacksburg and playing at a neutral stadium and enjoying what bowl week is like, not only for the players, but for the fans and our families. It's an awesome, awesome feeling. And I didn't know what I was missing the first 2 years until we made it in my third year. And I was like, wow, we got to get back to these more often. I mean, you get gift bags, you get allowances, and your family gets to be a part of it. Both families, your new family, your football family, and your immediate family. It's all together right there in one big soup bowl. So there's nothing like going to a bowl game.
All right, Free, I got to get this from you while we got you. Give me Antonio Freeman's recruiting pitch for Virginia Tech, because it clearly continues to be a big part of your life.
If you want to get an education and you want to play top-notch sports, come to Virginia Tech, because even after sports is over, you'll need an education to fall back on. I just think back to, his name was Coach Clark, when he sat into my living room in Baltimore, and he told me, he said, we can give you a great academic college experience, and we can give you a competitive football experience in college. Now, this was back in the 90s, 1990 to be exact. So 40 years later, 30 years later, those things still exist. Great education, great sports facility. We're redoing our new athletic facility, and you want to go to school with the best and play with the best, go to Virginia Tech.
That's pretty good right there. Just sign you up for recruiting. All right, here's a guy that you know, Free. I'm going to end it right here because there's a great chance I'm probably going to wind up on a golf course with him later this afternoon. Yeah, go ahead.
I did want to say, just mention a few things. My reach and some of the things that football has allowed me to do. It's allowed me to take 2 trips to Afghanistan to help build morale of the troops. One of those trips, we played in a flag football game, a bunch of NFL former legends against the troops. And we spent 2 weeks there just interacting with the troops. And man, it was a mind-blowing experience to be able to go over and interact with the troops and just sit down and eat with those guys and talk with them. And, you know, because when we go to college, we're away from our families, but these guys are really away from their families. Like, it's amazing what a phone call meant to a lot of those troops over there, and what our presence meant also coming over and spending time with them. So being at football has allowed me to do different things like that and work with foundations of at-risk youth. Man, I was able to partner up with Feed the Families and took a trip over to Africa and fed groups of families and villages over in Africa. We gave out clothing and shoes and different things of that nature. So very heart-touching experience that I was able to experience while also giving back. So man, and without the game of football, I tell parents all the time, none of that would have happened for me. But because of football, not only was I able to experience those type of things, but I was able to meet brothers and learn how to share and work together as a team. Something that most teenagers aren't good at. So, man, it was a great ride, man. I got to do so many things, back to school haircuts and school supply giveaways. And man, it was just an awesome experience. Not only being a Green Bay Packer, but again, being a Virginia Tech Hokie, a place that put everything in perspective and got me on my way.
Well, it's one thing for you to earn that platform. It's another thing to use it for all those good things that you've done. So on behalf of Hokie Nation, kudos to you for continuing to represent them that way. But I do have to close on this one because, as I mentioned, I'll probably wind up on a golf course with him later today. He's still around. He's now with the basketball program. He's going to run for mayor of Blacksburg one of these days. Bruce Garnes, I know that you love him. Give me your most embarrassing to Bruce story as we close.
Well, in college, I don't think you have G or PG stories. So
he's a father now.
We'll just skip to our adult life. You know, Bruce is a diehard Cowboys fan. And I was a diehard Cowboys fan until 1995, when they didn't select me in the first 3 rounds that they had a chance to select me, and the Green Bay Packers picked me up. So from that moment forward, I have hated the Dallas Cowboys, a team that I grew up loving for 22 years of my life. Well, Bruce is an avid Cowboys fan. I invited him up to Green Bay. Come on up, Bruce. The Cowboys are playing the Packers in the playoff game. Really? Yeah, come on up, Bruce. Now, this is the Dez Bryant fumble. I mean, Bruce is talking. You know Bruce. Bruce is talking all kinds of noise. He's talking trash. He just won't shut up. And we get into this Packer Hall of Fame suite. And he's meeting all these Packer legends, and all these different Packer guys are in there, and William Henderson. And I remember him taking a picture with one guy. And he goes, buddy, who was that I just took a picture with? And his name was Jerry Kramer. I'm like, Bruce, you don't know Jerry Kramer? He was like, I only know Cowboys, buddy. But to make a long story short, we kicked the Cowboys' butt that day, and Bruce was quiet all the way back to the hotel. He didn't even say goodbye before he got on the plane, but he did text me when he got home and say, the heck with you. I got home safe. Thank you. So I got to see Bruce at the height when he was pregame. He was way up here. And then postgame. Saw little Bruce. So awesome, man. It was awesome time, and great to catch up with Bruce. We had so many great college memories, and he was even my roommate for a year. So, you know, those stories get out of hand.
Yeah, awesome stuff, man. Thanks so much for taking so much time for Hokie Nation. Be well during all this, all right?
Thanks for having me.